There's no place like... I want to be a witch!
Wicked is a movie that you physically cannot escape from.
Didn't that movie come out like 5 months ago? Why are you just now talking about it?
Okay, yeah, whatever. But when a movie makes $728.2 million and is a story about toxic Yuri, how could I possibly resist the urge to make a video about it? While everybody has been ranting and raving about two magical girls going on their own magical adventures through the world of Oz and talking about how well Cynthia Weaver can sing, there's something that I've been thinking about so much, and that is how black the world of Oz truly is. And before y'all start, I can see your comments from a mile away.
Ella, the OG Oz books are about white people in Kansas getting into some nonsense.
Yeah, whatever, but when you watch Wicked, as well as all of the other remakes that are in the world of Oz, you cannot deny how black this franchise truly is. The theme of systematic oppression, as well as self-expression, is something that we have already seen on the channel with the allegory of green skin. And I don't care how many times I'm gonna make this analogy, we're spinning the block on this one. So if you're interested in an analysis of Wicked, keep on watching. Yeah.
Oh wow, if it isn't the Wicked Witch of the West herself. Thank you so much for coming on to Oz 11. We know you're currently on the run and all that, but it seriously means a lot that you found time to come here.
You guys seriously have me doing all this nonsense, and you seriously couldn't even get my name right? Wicked Witch of the West, seriously? Don't you know that epithet is literally deep state propaganda to convince the people of Oz that I'm some big, bad, evil witch, when the worst thing that I ever did was disobey the wizard? They're literally killing the talking animals of Oz. But I'm wicked. Yeah, okay. They're even calling me the DEI Witch of the West. And on top of that, you can't even get my name right? My name is Ellapba, not Elphaba.
I'm sorry, but according to my sources, you went by Elphaba.
These are the same sources that told you to call me the Wicked Witch of the West. So please call me by my trademark name, Ellapba, not Elphaba. This is pure anti-green racism. Look how they're treating all of us who are green right now. Look at Kermit. Look at Shigo. Look what they're doing to Shrek's daughter on Twitter. How can you whitewash an ogre? The movie opens up with a scene that's both metaphorical and literal. A symbolic cross burning that sets off the narrative that's deeply rooted in the experience of being a black person in America. Let me repeat this. The movie Wicked starts off with a white woman burning a grass statuette of a black woman, setting it ablaze and igniting a crowd to cheer. Let's unpack that.
I have always been interested in stories of people who are perceived as different and feel themselves isolated from normal society. Anyone who is of ethnic minority, who is black or Jewish or gay or a woman, feeling she grew up in a man's world, will identify with Elphaba. Since there's so many of us, I think there will be a lot of people who will.
For centuries, skin color has represented otherness, a divergence from status quo, where whiteness being the default skin color, anything that is not white is labeled as being a part of the outgroup. With this knowledge being at the forefront of our minds, it makes a lot of sense why green skin has been used as a symbol of otherness. Those with differing skin colors have always been villainized, from the dark-skinned creatures of ye old fairy tales to the OG Wicked Witch of the West from the original MGM film, who was a monstrous green-skinned villainous antagonist whose whole goal in the movie was destroying a fragile white protagonist. Greenness for a while now has been a tool that we've used to label people as alien, dangerous, and most of all wicked. Stories like Wicked, but particularly Cynthia Erivo's transformative portrayal of Elphaba in the latest movie, use greenness as a poignant allegory for what it means to be black and marginalized, and how it's important to accept yourself for who you are at the end of the day. Like I said before, we've talked about this trope on this channel. In time, sweetie, we'll talk about Shrek one day, but in this video, I'm gonna talk about what it means to be black as portrayed by the world of Oz. When I first learned that the Broadway musical known as Wicked was going to be adapted into a movie musical, I was extremely hesitant. Hollywood's track record with musicals have been arduous at best, especially coming off the heels of whatever the hell Mean Girls the musical was. However, Wicked completely defied all of my expectations, no pun intended, and that 3-hour masterpiece actually changed my life. Cynthia Erivo did such a good job playing Elphaba, and her performance was literally electrifying. Cynthia Erivo's portrayal of Elphaba was something I never expected that she would be able to do, because the entire casting and drama that surrounding this movie was a mess. This whole situation had me shaking in my boots, because we have this pale white woman who sometimes likes to be black, and this Nigerian woman who hates African Americans. In one movie, your girl was shaking in her boots. But somehow, despite everything and even the cheating scandal rumors, they made this movie one of the best movies I've seen in a long time. Everybody was telling me that this Wicked movie was going to be so corny, but I really feel like the subtext and literal text of oppression, liberation, identity, as well as systematic prejudice was top tier, and I just can't wait to analyze it. This video has 4 parts. I have no idea how long it's going to be when I publish it. But sit down, get your popcorn, because we're gonna be here for a while. Green skin, and I would dare even argue yellow skin, have always served as markers of otherness in media. In that same vein, I would argue that the witch archetype represents otherness for women, a perverse femininity, I would dare say. We live in a patriarchal society that demands that women be submissive in order for our society to function. So the very idea of a powerful, independent woman that is not beholden to a man in any way, shape, or form is inherently evil, wicked even. And throughout my research for this video, as I've watched so many different pieces of Oz related media, I've noticed that there is a lack of animosity for the main male culprits in all of this nonsense, and that is the wizard. It is only really in the Wicked movie that we get to see how evil and insidious this one man truly is. I have to remind you, in several iterations of all of the Oz related media, Dorothy is like a 14-year-old girl. Only in The Wiz did they age up Dorothy to make her 24 years old, but I still find it particularly insidious that this grown man sets this younger, in all iterations, girl to go do his dirty work, setting her against the big bad that he himself cannot defeat. If that isn't the patriarchy at its worst, I don't know what to tell you. This dynamic and the lack of hatred towards the wizard in almost all iterations of Oz related media goes to prove my point about how sexist and misogynistic the archetype of the witch is. Because yes, in all pieces of media relating to Oz, the Wicked Witch does do wild stuff. We're gonna analyze the Wiz in Act 4 of this video, but the fact that she is consistently portrayed as being more villainous than the wizard has always rubbed me the wrong way. So how exactly does this relate to Elphaba being a black witch of the West? Since a witch represents a woman that strays from societal conventions of normalcy and femininity, black women inherently fall into this category by simply being black and female in our society. Due to the inherent states of not being white, blonde hair, pale skin, blue eyes, all of that, people label black women as ugly due to not fitting into the European standard of beauty, and thus are sadly villainized and deemed as ugly.
In his book on ugliness, Umberto Eco writes that many women were accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake because they were ugly. Their exterior ugliness, their bodily difference, was seen as a sign of degenerative interior state. For a woman, then, ugly was not feminine but masculine, and a woman with supposedly masculine qualities was monstrous, evil, and aligned with the devil.
This passage reinforces the idea that witches are not just figures of rebellion, but figures of punishment. Women whose mere existence pushes the boundaries of acceptable femininity. When we apply this fact to Elphaba, the layers of societal condemnation get thicker. Black women in particular have been denied access to traditional femininity, not only because of European standards of beauty, but also how femininity has literally been designed as an opposition to black black women. If whiteness and delicate submissive beauty is required for a woman to be seen as good, what does that mean for a dark-skinned woman who refuses to be meek? She becomes a monster. She becomes a witch. Elphaba's story is then not just about one single woman being ostracized for being different. It is a story about how women, but specifically black women, are systematically shut down for being too loud, too strong, too independent. They got us sounding like Kendrick's halftime Super Bowl show.
No, 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 no! Too loud, too reckless, too ghetto. Mr. Lamar, do you really know how to play the game? Then tighten up!
Her green skin is an exaggerated metaphor for racialized otherness. Her green skin is a visible marker of her exclusion. Elphaba is sadly labeled as unfeminine, unworthy of love, and inherently dangerous. Not because she has done anything in particular, but all because of who she is and how she was born. My girl is labeled as a dangerous terrorist, and that is exactly the heart of the issue. Witches in our media have always served as a warning. Step out of line, betray the status quo, and you too will be ostracized like the witches of old. Forcefully labeled as a witch, that punishment and that ostracization is even worse. All because society inherently sees black women as an issue, as a problem. Act 1, I talked a lot about how the producers of Wicked choosing to make Elphaba our first visibly black Wicked Witch of the West wasn't that much of an extreme considering how demonized and vilified black women are in this country. I practically made the analogy of perverse femininity or stepping outside of our white patriarchal standards of beauty makes you a witch in our society, and how I feel like a lot of black women are akin to this. Do you know any black women in popular media who you feel like have had practically the witch archetype or the bad woman archetype placed upon them?
It's not a funny thing, but I'm a Beyonce fan, so it's like, for me, I would say Beyonce. Like, legitimately, there's something going on right now with her hairline. One of the products is like, in the routine of it is called the Ritual, and there's literally like a whole thing right now. I'm not putting that on my head. Like, what is that about? Like, a ritual, I'm not putting that on my head. Like, so a lot of things she does with music, I remember just growing up, and it was the Sweet Dreams video and the Single Ladies video, the Illuminati era.
I grew up in that era too.
I feel like with her, I never understood it because it would just be like, for me, music is just something that makes you move and dance. Like, it kind of has a way of like taking over you that you don't quite understand. Like, I remember reading this fun fact in like a Scholastic in 6th grade, I think. It was like, even if you're not up dancing and moving, like if you're just listening to music like idly sitting in a car, like your heart rate is gonna go up. I don't know, it's just like a reaction that you have. So I feel like with black women in a lot of spaces, it's like people are quick to jump to a conclusion of like something evil or witchcraft when it's literally just like expressing yourself through art. And like, art is always very subjective, and a lot of people have different ways of expressing that, but it's like a lot of times black women are put in a box to not try to do anything different. And so I'm like, for me, Beyonce is my only example, because I'm like, sometimes I'll be scratching my head figuring out what people are getting to, because stuff just be so simple. It's just like, she's just making music, and music just makes you move, and a lot of people don't resonate with that.
Yeah, you made such a good point. I never even thought about Beyonce. I was hoping you say something like Megan Thee Stallion, Serena Williams.
Oh my!
People really do Beyonce like that.
I can't say Megan Thee Stallion. Well, actually, hold on. 2020 was a really bad year to be a Megan Thee Stallion fan. Like, it was just like every little thing that she was doing was being just demonized, and her whole thing was just like, you know, empowering yourself and exuding confidence. And I love her for that. And just like, she just publicly just did whatever she wanted to do. But as we know, like, the whole thing with her having harm inflicted on her, I don't know what I could say for two, but it made her the villain in a scenario where she was actually the victim. And it was just like, it's kind of like people wait for black women to do something quote unquote wrong so that they can have a reason to like justify the preconceived notions that they already had in their mind. And watching her documentary and her talking about the fact that Megan Thee Stallion, was actually experiencing like insecurities and like self-confidence issues, I was like, my mind was blown, because I was like, she's the epitome to me of like self-confidence and empowering yourself as a black woman and doing whatever you wanted to do. But actually seeing her in that like vulnerable state state of like, she went on SNL and she was like worried about how she looked and she was upset about her team for not saying anything about it. But they're like, you look perfectly fine.
It's actually really sad because that's why I feel like a lot of black women can relate to someone like Elphaba, because seeing all of the vitriol that she faced throughout the entirety of Act 1 of the movie, right?
Literally.
I was just like, is this play about us? The distinction between good and wicked witches in The Wizard of Oz makes a very rigid and gendered binary, one that rewards submissive and nurturing femininity while demonizing independent, disruptive women as monstrous.
While the fairy tale The Wizard of Oz depicts women in positions of power, I argue that the dichotomy between the good witches and the wicked witch in both L. Frank Baum's 1900 novel and MGM's 1939 film validates one kind of femininity and stigmatizes the other as masculine, monstrous, and other, the woman who strays from her gender role.
This distinction is very crucial to understand how witches are utilized in patriarchal storytelling. Let's take Glinda for example. Glinda is known as the good witch of the north, I believe. She is the epitome of what all women should strive to. Graceful, delicate, beautiful, and most importantly, passive. She does not directly ever intervene in the conflict surrounding the greater issues of Oz and Dorothy. Instead, what Glinda does is gently guide Dorothy on her way to the wizard, a man who will then give her further instructions on how to take down the powerful evil witch. By doing this, Glinda is able to maintain her soft power by not overtly having a position of authority in the narrative. Her power is soft, non-threatening, and an ideal that all women should strive to. However, the Wicked Witch or Elphaba, depending on if we're looking at the MGM story or we're looking at Wicked, is not like that at all. She is aggressive and active and always willing to step to those in power in order to get her way. We see this in the MGM version of the tale as well as in Wicked. She is unwilling to be a slave to the wizard, and this one action makes her a threat to Oz as we know it. The Wicked Witch of the West, or Elphaba, whoever you want to for this analogy, is unwilling to accept the wizard's patriarchal machinations, which inherently makes her a threat, not only to the society known as Oz, but also to the gendered expectations put on women. Her rejection of docility and her insistence of making her own path for her own life mark her as the great other. As Florwick suggests, her divergence from traditional femininity inherently makes her masculine. Calling card that is often associated with black women for having the gall to be loud and wanting to have their own opinion. This sadly makes both Elphaba masculine according to the narrative, as well as black women masculine according to our society. This goes back to my whole entire point about the ritualized implication of the Wicked Witch to begin with. If femininity in of itself has been historically aligned in opposition to black womanhood, then the binary of good witch versus wicked witch becomes an even clearer allegory for how society separates black women from all other types of women. White women who conform to these beauty standards are upheld as good and worthy of protection, while black women, because of the fact that they are black and women, are inherently seen as wicked, undeserving of protection, and even worse, undeserving of love. That is why on this channel I ride so hard against the disposable black girlfriend trope, because of all of the history surrounding black women and our femininity. So many people continually state that we are not deserving of love, especially when we're considered strong and independent. That's why I was not having it when it came to Mel. Check out my Arcane video. But the same thing is said with my girl Elphaba and all other wicked witches as they are presented in the world of Oz. While all wicked witches as they are portrayed in the world of Oz show you what happened when you abandon your assigned gender roles, Glinda and all of the good witches show you what can happen when you follow your assigned gender roles and do as you are told. As we see in the end of Wicked, Glinda ends up giving up on her best friend in order to maintain her status of privilege, luxury, and overall happiness, while Elphaba decides to stand up for what she believes in and goes on her own path. And just like the good witch of the north that she is, Glinda falls into all of our society's idea of perfect femininity. Her characterization in the world of Oz isn't just about her beauty and her supposed kindness. No, it is about reinforcing a femininity that is tied deeply to wealth, whiteness, and most importantly, passivity.
As a youthful and beautiful maternal figure, Glinda alone represents ideal femininity. The image she projects might define the feminine ideal to which all female spectators might aspire, and in 1939 and for several years thereafter.
This passage goes to show how Glinda exemplifies a very narrow definition of womanhood. She is not just good, she is the ideal. Anything that strays from said ideal must be punished. Her beauty, youth, and maternal nature all come together in a very curated image of what the ideal woman should be. She is wealthy, as evidenced by the fact that she is always ordained in jewels, and even in the Wicked version, she is always dressed like a preppy, gossip girl version of herself, right? And most importantly, she is white. They made a specific choice by making Elphaba black, but keeping Glinda as white, and that is to continue the portrayal of what acceptable femininity is supposed to be. I have seen some stage versions where Glinda is a black woman, and that is shocking. But there's a reason why they chose Ariana Grande of all people to play Glinda in Wicked. In contrast, the Wicked Witch is the antithesis of everything Glinda represents. While Glinda is jewels and pastels and baby pinks, Elphaba and the Wicked Witch of the West are greens, dark tone, anything to make her into a monstrous figure. The juxtaposition of these two are not just about their morality, it's also how femininity is divided by class as well as race. Historically, black women have been denied the type of femininity that Glinda represents. The dainty, submissive, pink frilliness that Glinda had is something that black women have not been allowed for centuries. All I can think about are the hair codes that prevented black women from living in their truth and having to cover their hair, and how black women, due to all of these restrictions, were able to take this oppression put on them, rebuild those hair laws into something to still represent their beauty and their femininity. But black women's femininity is consistently and will continue to be under attack by our society. And with all of that in mind, Elphaba and the way that she is portrayed by Cynthia Erivo in Wicked goes to serve as a paradox, because even though she is green and she is monstrous by her very nature and her otherness that her green skin has made her to be, she is undoubtedly a very feminine figure. She always has her braids done, she always has her nails done, she's very kind and maternal, as we can see by how she and Fiyero snuck off to let that bear cub have a semblance of a life outside of being a caged beast. And that's why I related so much to her, because she is a living paradox. She's a black woman, she's a monster, but she, at the end of the day, is still a person.
In the 1939 film, The Wizard of Oz, the gender binary is again reflected through the opposition between good and evil witches. Elphaba is then both or neither human and animal, masculine and feminine, good and evil, human and God, as well as perhaps other and I. Glinda's jewel-crowned gown and tall crown again suggests wealth. In addition, she is evidently white. These final characteristics, especially in contrast to the Wicked Witch, bring race and class into the definition of the feminine ideal.
This fluidity is exactly what makes Elphaba dangerous. The inability to categorize means that she cannot be easily controlled and or put into a submissive position, unlike her supposed best friend Glinda. Elphaba's identity in her society is unshifting, undefinable, and unknown. This destabilization of binaries is even more significant when considering Elphaba as a black woman. Historically, black women have been positioned outside of traditional femininity. Their existence, and my existence as well, complicates the very definitions that uphold white womanhood as the standard. If femininity is associated with delicacy, softness, and submission, then what happens to women who are denied access to those traits? Like Elphaba, they become something other. Too strong, too independent, too defiant. Yet again, it sounds like I'm quoting Kendrick. They become figures of contradictions, caught in the space between admiration and fear, between empowerment and demonization. And we see this all the time with prominent black women. If it's not Serena Williams, if it's not Megan Thee Stallion, if it's not even Mel from Arcane, black women have to toe a very fragile line in order for all this hate and vitriol to not come their way. Elphaba's refusal to conform makes her an unsettling figure, both within the Wizard of Oz as via the Wicked Witch, and within broader societal narratives about women who resist characterization. She is not truly good nor is she purely evil. She is not fully embraced, nor is she fully rejected. Her existence alone calls into question the structures that demand women to be one thing or another. Pick a place, pick a side, rather than a complex, contradictory whole. Perhaps this is why so many relate to Elphaba's story. She is not wicked because she is inherently evil. She is wicked because she refuses to be easily understood. And in a world that thrives on control, that defiance is the greatest threat of all. I love this movie, y'all, so much. But I really want to talk about the nonsense of how it feels like to be a black woman in a PWI in Act 2.